Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Allawi's bloc wins most Iraq seats. Netanyahu remains firm on Jerusalem housing. And a constitutional crisis in Pakistan. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
This programme, we will be discussing the results of Iraq's parliamentary elections, finally announced by the Election Commission. Allawi of the Arabiya list has won by a slim margin of 2 seats, but without getting an outright majority. It was a tight race between Al-Maliki and Allawi, and now the big question is, what next? With fears of a building political crisis, there's been thousands of protesters out on the streets throughout the country this week demanding a recount amid allegations of fraud by a number of blocs, including Prime Minister Al-Maliki's State of Law coalition. Now, Al-Maliki has said the country could return to violence if his demands of a recount are not met. He has spoken just after the results were announced.
We now go to Prime Minister Al-Maliki's speech on the election results.
Today, the election results have been announced by the Independent Electoral Commission amidst public demand, as well as demands by different political parties and coalitions to conduct a manual recount of the election ballots in order to clearly show that the elections were transparent. We want to establish a state and a government based on these results, and it is fundamentally important that these results are transparent. The suspicions that were expressed by numerous parties are still present. Regardless of who won or lost, and regardless of which coalition won more votes, the suspicions revolving around the election results will remain the focus of our attention. The process of evaluating all legally submitted grievances must continue until the truth comes out. We are not speaking against anyone, but the Electoral Commission, being an independent and neutral body, has the duty of seriously evaluating all the appeals, grievances and suspicions submitted by the different slates. The future of the political and democratic process in the country depends on this duty. I am speaking as Prime Minister, and I spoke with the Iraqi President about this issue. We demand that the Electoral Commission recount the election ballots in provinces that had problems, and we have a great number of documented grievances. Some were discussed by the Electoral Commission, but others still need to be discussed. We believe that the results of the elections announced today are not final. These results are not final.
Arab foreign ministers allocated $500 million to support Jerusalem. This decision came at the end of the Arab Summit's preparatory ministerial meeting. The summit will be held in Sirte, Libya, on Saturday.
On the eve of hosting Arab leaders who are attending the Arab Summit, the slogan that prevailed on the streets of the city of Sirte was a call to transcend the disputes between the Arab countries. This is the first summit to be held in Libya since the Arab League was established 6 decades ago. But it will be the 18th summit to be attended by Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi since he took power 40 years ago. A number of Arab leaders who joined Gaddafi in his first summit in 1969 have passed away by now. Today, Gaddafi will not only be the host of the Arab leaders here, but he will also be the head of the Arab summit for an entire year. During the preparatory meeting held for the foreign ministers, Libyan officials stressed the Libyan leaders' hopes for the summit to conclude with feasible resolutions. An unexpected surprise came during the meeting when Iraqi Foreign Minister Hoshyar Zebari threatened to quit the summit as long as the summit did not unequivocally support Iraq's political process.
If we witness any surprises that could harm or confuse the Iraqi government or the Iraqi people, we reserve our right to take a different stance. The minister's response was kind and good, and Iraq received very strong Arab support, even from the Arab League and the conference organizer. Therefore, the question of the Iraqi delegation's withdrawal is no longer on the table.
Afterward, things proceeded smoothly. The Preparatory Council of Ministers passed most of the proposed resolutions submitted by the delegations, the most important being the Israeli measures in Jerusalem and the peace process. The Yemeni initiative of expanding the work of the Arab League was submitted to the leaders' meeting for evaluation. The BBC learned from sources inside the summit that Saudi Arabian King Abdullah and the President of the United Arab Emirates, Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, will not attend the summit. Firas Kalani, BBC, CERT.
The Israeli Prime Minister held a meeting with his 7 cabinet ministers to discuss an Israeli response to American demands aimed at launching indirect peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians.
The American demands are facing strong opposition from Israeli ministers, especially those pertaining to the settlement freeze in East Jerusalem. However, Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak called on the Israeli government to accept the American demands.
Our correspondent Elias Karam reports on the differences between Washington and Tel Aviv on the issue of settlement construction.
Between Obama and Netanyahu's right-wing coalition, the Israeli Prime Minister is between a rock and a hard place as he is trying to reach a satisfactory solution for both sides. He met with his 7 cabinet ministers to discuss with them the outcome of his talks with Obama in Washington. They met in order to reach a decision on whether to accept or reject the American demands aimed at starting indirect talks between the Israelis and the Palestinians. While Defense Minister Ehud Barak called for accepting the American demands, most of the other ministers are opposed to a settlement freeze in Jerusalem. The final decision, however, was postponed until after the Passover holiday.
Netanyahu maintains his position that Israel has the right to build in Jerusalem, but he will try to ease the dispute with the U.S. However, I do not think that he will succeed. A crisis will emerge within the Israeli government because the Labour Party will withdraw and form a new government coalition with Kadima and without Shas and Yisrael Beituna.
The American demands can be summed up in 6 points. Most importantly, freezing settlement construction in occupied Jerusalem and the West Bank, final status issues to be discussed in the indirect negotiations, placing areas B and C under the full control of the Palestinian authorities such as Abu Dis and East Jerusalem, releasing 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, and establishing a Palestinian state in 2 years within the 1967 borders that include East Jerusalem.
The American administration is serious. The Obama administration notified us that it is committed to the demands submitted to the Israeli government. However, it is clear that the current Israeli government has rejected the demands that created a true crisis between the U.S. and Israel. This cannot be denied.
It seems that Netanyahu is facing a serious problem. If he accepts the American demands, especially those pertaining to the settlement freeze in Jerusalem, he will cause a crisis within his government coalition and in turn cause a crisis in the Knesset and open the door to a new government coalition. Is Netanyahu facing a crisis with Washington, or is it just different points of view? Netanyahu is definitely facing 2 hard choices. If he accepts the American demands, he may lose his government coalition, which may lead to its collapse. If he decides to protect his government coalition, he will harm his relations with the U.S., which may affect the way the Iranian nuclear program will be handled. Ilyas Karam, Al Jazeera, Western Jerusalem.
In Washington, Defense Secretary Robert Gates stated that Israel and the Palestinians' inability to reach a settlement affects U.S. national security in the region.
Gates' statement coincides with a poll that shows that the majority of Americans think that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict diminishes U.S. standing around the world.
Our correspondent in Washington, Fadi Mansour, reports on the results of the poll.
According to a recent poll, 80% of Americans believe that the Israel-Palestine conflict receives a lot of attention and that it negatively affects U.S. interests in the Middle East.
If the president were to communicate
and to focus on this issue, you would see a modest shift in public opinion, not a drastic shift.
It seems that statements made by the country's political and military leadership has affected American public opinion. From day one, President Barack Obama placed solving the conflict as a top priority. In addition, military leaders, and notably the defense secretary, warned of the conflict's negative consequences on U.S. national security. And even though 38% of Americans believe that President Obama has a pro-Israel bias versus 6% who believe he has a pro-Palestinian bias, the majority, 50%, supports an even-handed position to solve the Palestinian issue. This marks a change in American public opinion in regard to the administration's position on reaching a settlement.
However, what we see is public opinion
changing very slowly. The demographic of public opinion, and especially among the Democrats, are slowly shifting, and this is the message that Democratic leaders should receive. If they believe their base of support to be among the Jewish community that supports Israel, well, this reality has changed.
The problem of the settlements, which has strained U.S.-Israeli relations, clearly shows the effect that this administration has had on public opinion. It should be pointed out that the poll was conducted before Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's last visit to Washington and the additional tension that has come along with that. 34% of Americans consider the settlements to be a necessity for Israel's security. Meanwhile, 40% support their demolishment. However, what's striking is that 40% of Americans support their administration's firm position against settlement expansion. The pollsters point out the sharp division in American public opinion between Republicans, Democrats, and independents around the controversial issues such as Jerusalem and the settlements. The pollsters have reached another conclusion, and that is the Obama administration's ability to take a firm position with Netanyahu's government, and specifically in regard to the settlement issue, since it enhances its standing with its Democratic and independent base. Fadi Mansour, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Hit-and-run confrontations between Pakistani forces and Taliban elements are continuous. Pakistani authorities announced an operation that foiled an attack on a security site that was organized by a group composed of 150 Taliban fighters, which killed at least 24 Taliban members in the Waraskai region of northwestern Pakistan. The attack also led to the death of 2 officers and 4 soldiers. The Pakistani parliament indefinitely postponed the memorandum for the 18th constitutional amendment after a confrontation broke out between the government and the opposition over a judicial article. Nawaz Sharif's party objects to the proposal that strips the president's power to appoint judges, while the Pakistani government insists on amending the article. The government tried to contain the dispute that shattered the hope of returning that jurisdiction to the parliament. Our correspondent Mayub Khudr reports from Islamabad.
القضاء ملف شائك يعيد المواجهة إلى الساحة السياسية في باكستان.
The judicial system is the complex issue that reintroduced a confrontation on the Pakistani political scene. Nawaz Sharif viewed the memorandum for constitutional amendment and objected to an article pertaining to the way judges are appointed.
We will not accept what threatens the independence of the judiciary in the country. Unfortunately, the Constitutional Amendment Committee ignored our proposed resolutions. Therefore, we refuse the submission of the memorandum before it receives political consensus. If not, it will be difficult to pass.
This position prompted the government to focus on working to transcend the dispute, which makes the fate of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution unknown.
The delay in submitting the memorandum frustrates the Pakistani people, especially after the consensus it received from all political parties, including Sharif's party. We hope that the dispute will be transcended in the next few days.
So the dispute is only over the article of judge appointment, giving the impression that the consensus was quick to strip the president's power of parliament dismissal and military leaders' appointment and return it to the prime minister. The former president, Pervez Musharraf, Sharif's first opponent, had made these amendments to the constitution.
I think that the Pakistan Muslim League lost popularity politically and publicly because of this surprising decision. The League should forgo the judiciary track, otherwise the country will face a political crisis.
After 2 years of working on the memorandum for a constitutional amendment in the hope of returning the jurisdiction to the parliament, frustration clouds the political situation again amidst fears of an upcoming political crisis.
In the last few years, the deteriorating economic and social conditions under the occupation have caused the increase in the trade of human organs in Iraq. Officials confirmed the presence of gangs specializing in the theft of organs from unidentified bodies that arrive at government hospitals and at the medical centers, which have spread since 2006.
In post-occupation Iraq, a new trade has emerged. Its commodity, human organs. With the deteriorating economic and social conditions under deliberate government negligence, and with the occupation sowing violence and conflict, in the land of the two rivers, specialized gangs have formed to steal organs from unidentified bodies that arrive at government hospitals and medical centers. A forbidden trade, without a doubt. Available for sale, it displays every possible human body part and organ. According to medical sources, the most demanded good is a kidney, and in the past few years, its price has reached $30,000. A current official in the Ministry of Health admitted that the ministry is unable to monitor all buying and selling operations that take place while the patient is under anesthesia in government hospitals, while the current director of investigations in the Ministry of Interior did not deny the existence of the trade. Even though the ministry is aware of its existence and of the main center in Baghdad, the official simply expressed regret for the ministry's inability to police these gangs and put an end to the trade. Human rights experts have indicated that the American occupation is the one that created the organ trade in the land of the two rivers. The occupiers' crimes in Abu Ghraib prison are still on people's minds. Occupation soldiers stole prisoners' organs after they died and performed operations on them solely to remove their organs in order to sell them or trade them outside the country. And although international agreements prohibit the trade in human organs, the current parliament did not address the issue. Its tolerance is a flagrant violation of the most basic human rights and the most basic rights of the citizens of this country, who already face the brunt of the occupation and its political maneuvers.
Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at the Listening Post. This week, America, Israel, and the settlements in East Jerusalem.
Was insulting.
The media's role in the war of words. Did reporters get the story straight in Nigeria?
Mostly Christian villages.
Was it a religious fight or something else? Thailand's prime ministers, old and new, are going at it in the media, old and new. And the fictitious animated story behind Google Earth.
Photograph the entire planet from every angle.
We begin with a story of what diplomats euphemistically refer to as a frank and full exchange of views, one that was fought out over the media. The issue, the decision by the Netanyahu government in Israel to build 1,600 new housing units in East Jerusalem on Palestinian land. The Obama administration would have opposed the decision no matter what the circumstances were. But the fact that the announcement was made during a visit to the country by the American Vice President Joe Biden was seen as a slap in the face of the U.S. The news media fed on the story. For Palestinians seeking to draw attention to what they call the ongoing theft of their land, the diplomatic fallout was a godsend because the settlement issue was where Palestinians wanted to be, in the headlines. That's our starting point this week. The badly timed announcement, the impact it had on the rosy image of the relationship between the U.S. and Israel, and what the reporting of this story says about how the media cover the settlement issue.
The U.S.-Israel relationship is still on shaky ground.
This whole crisis started when Israel announced plans to build 1,600 new homes in this part of Jerusalem.
Stories of political conflict are covered every day in the media. The reason this story became big news is that the conflict is not just between Palestinians and Israelis over settlements. It is between Israel and the United States.
A diplomatic crisis with Israel.
The American media likes conflict. There was a really good story here.
The U.S. and Israel are at a crisis point today.
Right now, it's all about damage control.
I think the drama of the events and the coincidence of the timing created an automatic story for the media.
This time I was amazed with the amount of coverage, especially the negative one vis-a-vis Israel's behavior.
They are irate about it, they condemned it, they think it really undermines the process.
This was not the first time that Israel, under the Obama administration's watch, has announced the building of new settlements on Palestinian land. It has happened 5 times before. However, the presence of the American vice president in Israel changed the whole media equation.
Well, just imagine if the announcement of the settlements had taken place and Biden wasn't there. I think the settlement announcement wouldn't have got much attention at all. The attention came because it was seen as a slap in the face at Biden.
He was ambushed by the announcement.
If they announced it a week after Biden left, there would have been no story.
That's really what's interesting here, is the flip from expectation of a trip that expressed solidarity to a trip where the story that came out of it was, this is an insult.
An affront, it was an insult.
That really was very dramatic. I still think the U.S. would have expressed the same policy, but the media may have covered it differently.
The Obama White House, like administrations before it, has been unapologetically supportive of Israel. And the American media have long been seen as soft on Israel and its policies. Softer even than Israeli media are when they cover their own government. On this story, however, there was a distinct change in tone from both U.S. political leaders and media messengers, such as when the Secretary of State was interviewed on CNN about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Do you blame him for that? Well, I don't have any reason to believe he knew about it, but he is the Prime Minister. It's like, you know, the President or the Secretary of State. When you have certain responsibilities, ultimately, you are responsible.
The administration used the media to get across a very strong message that they were furious.
The announcement of the settlements the very day that the Vice President was there was insulting. I mean,
when Hillary Clinton used the word insult, when David Axelrod, who is #2 person in the White House and who is Jewish, went on television, his face was angry. They were sending a clear message that they are furious and that times have changed.
The U.S. media generally follows the line of the United States government and describes settlement activity in the terms that the United States government describes settlement activity. This time they picked up on this new and different and very bold language from the Obama administration.
So here's the question. Is it time for the United States to get tougher with Israel?
CNN allowed Jack Cafferty to read viewers' comments.
Dana writes from Oregon, yeah.
Which were mostly critical of Israel for almost 5 minutes.
Palestinians, I don't understand what the Israelis hope to prove by any of this.
That's a long segment by CNN standards, especially when it comes to criticism of Israel. Even Israeli media was critical of what had happened. The Israeli paper Yediot Ahronot published that Biden had privately complained to Netanyahu that Israel's behavior was starting to get dangerous for the United States. That Biden made such a statement has been denied by the White House. Nevertheless, this statement has left an impact on those who follow the Arab-Israeli conflict closely.
And Israeli media reflected on one of the most striking aspects of this story, the PR blunder, committed by a government that runs what is considered to be the slickest, best organized public relations machine in the Middle East.
I'm sure it's very disappointing to the media advisors of the Prime Minister of Israel as to how and why the settlement announcement was made at that time. I'm sure there is some serious self-reflection going on among the most senior media advisors to the Israeli government right now.
Israeli media, as most of the Israelis, doesn't want to see conflict with our strongest and best ally. The settlements as it is not a big issue in the media coverage. It is a big issue when there is international crisis.
واستمرار إسرائيل في سياستها القمعية.
On the Arab side of the media street, there was plenty of coverage, but it had a skeptical quality to it. Even though the tone the White House is using and that the American media are echoing is different, right now this is still a story about what is being said as opposed to what is being done.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible from support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news. Read our blog. Get transcripts of past shows and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.